Welcome to the channel. My mother-in-law, gripping a bottle of weed killer, demanded I take the fall for my sister-in-law's tax evasion. Otherwise, she threatened to end her life. I smirked and showed her something that made her face turn white. My husband's entire family was in a panic. I stood motionless, observing the chaos before me, feeling as if I'd stumbled onto the stage of a cheap provincial theater, rather than the luxurious mansion where I had personally invested in every plate and every fork. In the middle of the living room, my mother-in-law, Brenda Peterson, was staging a classic tragedy. She sat on the cold marble floor. Her gray hair was intentionally disheveled. A thick, rough rope, typically used for bundling goods, dangled from her neck. It was clear she had just pulled it from a dusty storage closet. In her right hand, she clutched a yellowed plastic bottle with an almost entirely peeled-off label, leaving only a faint insecticide visible. The sharp scent of dampness and mold overwhelmed even the aroma of my expensive perfume. She wailed, her mournful cries piercing the silence of the exclusive gated community. Oh, heavens! Oh, earth! Why such a bitter fate? My daughter, my flesh and blood, made a mistake, and if no one saves her, how can I go on living? Better I should die and spare everyone the suffering. Let me die. Sitting on a natural Italian leather sofa, my father-in-law, Richard Peterson, took a deep drag from his cigarette and exhaled a thick cloud of smoke. He squinted at me, his face set in the grave expression of a retired government official still clinging to the vestiges of his former authority. He flicked ash into a crystal ashtray. His voice was low and hoarse, yet full of authoritative pressure. Sarah, you see how your mother suffers, and you can stand there like a statue. In this family, you're the only one with connections, influence, and knowledge of the law. Your sister, Ivy, made a foolish misstep. You are her sister-in-law. You must take responsibility for her. It's your duty, your moral obligation. As the woman who keeps this family afloat, I cast a glance into the corner of the room. Ivy, my precious sister-in-law, sat huddled, her face pale, but a calculating glint in her eyes was fixed on me. She had just received a notice for an additional tax assessment and penalties totaling $2.5 million for a shell company she created for invoice manipulation. $2.5 million. An enormous sum for someone who only knows how to spend money and party. But it was this exact amount her entire family wanted to pin on me. And there, at my feet, knelt my husband, David, a man I once believed was my lifelong anchor. He clutched the hem of my dress and looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, pleading, "Sarah, I beg you, save Ivy this one time. If she goes to jail, her life will be over. You're a financial director. You have extensive connections. If you take the blame, surely there will be a way to mitigate the sentence, or at worst, get probation. You're so talented. Nothing will happen to you. Please, for my sake, for the sake of this family." David's words were like a bucket of icy water poured over my head, finally sobering me up after 3 years of delusion. It turns out, in their eyes, my talent and efforts were merely tools for their exploitation. They wanted me, a certified public accountant, CPA, with an MBA from a top-tier university, a person who upholds the reputation of an entire corporation, to take the blame for tax evasion instead of my sister-in-law. They knew perfectly well that if I admitted guilt, my career would be irrevocably ruined. I would lose everything: reputation, honor, and future. But they didn't care. Their only concern was saving their spoiled daughter and preserving the illusory prestige of this family. Seeing my silence, Brenda wailed even louder, bringing the insecticide bottle to her mouth. "You don't agree? You want to see an old mother die right here? Fine, I'll drink it to give you pleasure. I'll die and become a ghost that will haunt you for life." I looked at the bottle in her hand. If I wasn't mistaken, it had been lying in the corner of the tool shed at our lake house since I got married 3 years ago. The expiration date must have passed ages ago. Did she really think I was a naive child to be scared by such cheap tricks? Anger boiled in my chest, but I restrained myself. For the past 3 years, I had endured, spending money lavishly to support them, and in return, I received this blatant betrayal. Fine, if they wanted to play a drama, I would play it with them until the final scene. But this time, I would be the director. I coldly pushed David's hand away from my dress and stepped back to avoid the cloud of smoke from Richard's cigarette. I looked directly into Brenda's eyes. My voice was so calm that I surprised myself. Brenda, don't rush to drink that. That bottle is too old. It won't kill you instantly. You'll only suffer from terrible internal pain. Then you'll have to go to the ER for a stomach pump, which will cost a fortune. Wait a minute. With that, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving behind my astonished in-laws, who exchanged bewildered glances, not understanding what I was about to do. The interrogation show was temporarily paused, but I knew the real storm was just beginning. I entered the bedroom, closed the door, and took a deep breath to compose myself. This spacious, comfortable room was once my cozy sanctuary. Why did it feel so cold and alien now? I walked to my personal closet and opened the bottom drawer. There stood a dark green plastic bottle with a bright red cap, its shiny label untouched. It was a bottle of powerful weed killer that I had bought yesterday to ask the gardener to clear out the overgrown lot behind my parents' suburban home. I hadn't had a chance to take it there before this whole situation erupted. Truly, man proposes, but God disposes. Now, it had become my best prop. I took the bottle in my hand, feeling its weight. It was as heavy as the burden I had carried for the past 3 years for this family. I looked at myself in the mirror, adjusted my hair, and added a touch of red lipstick to give my face a more resolute look. The woman in the mirror stared back with a piercing gaze, no trace of weakness or subservience left. The Sarah Miller of yesterday was gone. Only a woman ready to fight for herself remained. I opened the door and descended the stairs. The sound of my steps on the wooden treads was firm and resonant, echoing through the entire house. Downstairs, in the living room, the 3 of them were frozen in the same poses, like statues awaiting my decision. Seeing me, Brenda began to moan again, preparing to lift her old, worn bottle. I walked directly to the coffee table and, with a loud thud, placed the new bottle of weed killer on its glass surface. The dry sound made all 3 of them jump. "Here," I said in an icy tone. "This is the newest, most potent herbicide. 1 small sip is enough to burn your insides to cinders. Salvation will be impossible. Even the best doctors will be helpless. Brenda, if you want to die to protect your honor and send your daughter-in-law to prison in place of your daughter, use this bottle. It'll be quicker and less agonizing." The space plunged into dead silence. Brenda stared at the new bottle before her. There was no color in her face. Her hand trembled, and the old bottle fell from it, rolling across the floor. She couldn't utter a word. Her eyes darted, seeking support from her husband and son. Richard was stunned. The cigarette in his hand burned down to the filter, scorching his fingers. He hastily dropped it to the floor and yelled at me. You dare offer poison to your mother-in-law? What kind of daughter-in-law are you, you wretch? You want to kill her." I smirked, crossing my arms over my chest and looking at him. "Richard, that's so funny. Brenda herself wanted to die. I merely provided her with a better means to fulfill her wish. Why are you yelling at me? Weren't you talking about sacrifice for the family's honor? Brenda is performing such a noble act. You should be proud." Then I turned to David, who was still kneeling, but had now risen with a bewildered expression on his face. "And you asked me to save Ivy. Fine, I will save her according to the law. I'll hire the best lawyer to mitigate her sentence in court, not go to jail instead of her. Whoever did it pays for it. She's 30 years old. If she knows how to party, she should know how to take responsibility. Don't you dare drag me into this mess." Hearing this, Ivy burst into tears and threw herself at Brenda's feet. "Mom, save me. I don't want to go to jail. Sarah is so cruel. She wants me to rot in jail." Seeing her daughter's tears, Brenda flew into a rage. She jabbed a finger at me. You venomous snake. I never thought I brought such a monster into this house. If you don't take the blame for your sister, then get out of my house. There's no place in my home for heartless daughters-in-law like you." I burst out laughing. My laugh was bitter, but at the same time, liberating. "Brenda, you're kicking me out? Have you forgotten whose name this mansion is in? Whose money bought it? Sarah Miller's money. All the deeds to the house and land are my premarital property. It's not me who will have to leave, but your entire family." My words were a fatal blow to them, crushing their arrogance. Richard turned beet red. David's jaw dropped, and Brenda was speechless. They had lived off me for so long, and had become so accustomed to it that they forgot who was truly the owner of this house. I picked up my handbag and cast one last contemptuous glance at them. "But don't worry, I won't kick you out right now. I'm leaving. I'll stay in a hotel to give you time to think. And remember my words, the suicide show failed. Don't try to repeat it. I won't buy a ticket to that performance again." With that, I turned and walked toward the door, leaving behind the confusion and fear frozen in the eyes of my husband's family. I drove straight to the city's most luxurious 5-star hotel. As the door to the opulent suite opened, the cool air and subtle scent of lemongrass and sandalwood helped me relax a little. I collapsed onto the huge, soft bed, closed my eyes, and finally found a moment of quiet. But I hadn't come here to sleep. I had come here to begin the cleanup. I sat up, opened my laptop, and picked up my phone. The first thing I did was call the bank. "Hello. This is Sarah Miller. I want to immediately block all supplementary credit cards issued in the names of David Peterson and Brenda Peterson that are linked to my primary account right now." The voice on the other end quickly confirmed the information. I heard the tap of keys and the pleasant voice of the operator. "Cards successfully blocked, Miss Miller." I smirked. David's card limit was $50,000 a month. Brenda's was $30,000. For the past 3 years, they had spent my money like water. David on lunches with friends, new gadgets, and, as I now realized, supporting a mistress. Brenda on spa salons, designer clothes, and generous donations to church to appear pious and affluent. From this moment on, that flow of money was cut off for them. Next, I logged into my online banking app. I canceled all automatic payments for electricity, water, internet, cable television, community HOA fees, and car parking. This mansion alone devoured nearly $5,000 a month just for utilities due to their habit of keeping the air conditioning on 24/7, even when no one was home. We'd see how they lived when there was no one to pay the bills. I opened an Excel spreadsheet and began reviewing my assets. I'm a financier. For me, all numbers must be precise. I listed all the amounts I had spent on my husband's family over the past 3 years. The purchase of a Toyota Land Cruiser for Richard Peterson so he could boast to his retired friends. $80,000, $100,000. Renovation of the family lake house, at Richard's request. $250,000. Paying off Ivy's credit card debts. $100,000. Paying off Brenda Peterson's gambling debts from an illegal poker game. $150,000. The list went on and on. The total amount exceeded $3 million. I looked at this figure and shuddered. Yes, I earned money. Over the past 3 years, I had earned $5 million thanks to large auditing contracts and investments in securities, but I had thrown more than half of that amount into a bottomless pit. And my husband, his government salary, a pittance. If he brought home $2,000 for household expenses, he walked around as if he had performed a heroic feat, but then secretly asked me for twice that for his pocket money. I called my personal attorney, Michael Davis. "Hello, Michael. I need you to immediately draft an affidavit. I want to document the condition of all my personal property in the mansion and prepare bank statements confirming the financial flows I directed towards supporting my husband's family. Prepare the documents for an uncontested divorce. Yes, I've made up my mind. There will be no reconciliation." Hanging up, I felt such relief, as if a 1,000-ton stone had been lifted from my shoulders. I had been too foolish, believing that my generosity and sincerity could change them. But I was wrong. For greedy people, my kindness was merely a display of stupidity that they exploited. My phone began to vibrate incessantly. It was David. He must have been at the supermarket or gas station and discovered that the card wasn't working. I looked at the name beloved husband on the screen and felt nauseous. I didn't turn off the phone, nor did I answer. I just let it vibrate until it quieted. Then it vibrated again, and messages flooded in. "Sarah, why isn't the card working? What are you doing? Come home immediately, we need to talk. Mom's blood pressure has spiked. Do you want to kill her? I scanned the messages and tossed the phone aside. It wasn't time to talk yet. Let them try living without money for a few days. Let the empty refrigerator, the empty gas tank, and the suffocating heat from the disconnected electricity teach them their first lesson about the value of money and hard work. I stood up and walked to the panoramic window, looking at the city sparkling with lights. Below, the stream of people still rushed in different directions. I poured myself a glass of red wine and raised it, admiring the ruby color. "To your freedom, Sarah," I whispered. In this war, I was confident of victory because I controlled the finances. And in this society, just like in that rotten family, whoever controls the finances decides who lives and who dies. Tomorrow, I would set the next trap for my dear sister-in-law. 2 days after my departure, as expected, chaos erupted in the mansion. I, as usual, went to work, looked impeccable, conducted important meetings, but in one ear, I had an earpiece connected to the house's video surveillance system. I had secretly installed additional cameras with audio recording in the living room and kitchen a month ago when I began to suspect the disappearance of several small pieces of jewelry. Unexpectedly, they came in handy for something else entirely. On my phone screen, I saw a dark image of the house. The utility company had done its job. Electricity was cut. The house was stifling hot, like an oven. Richard Peterson sat on the sofa shirtless, fanning himself with a scrap of an old newspaper. Sweat streamed down his fleshy folds. He swore, "That damn bitch. She dared to cut off the power to her father. I'll beat all her teeth out and report her to the authorities." Brenda Peterson lay on the cool, tiled floor, moaning. "Oh, it's so hot. Where is Sarah? Call her. Tell her to pay the electricity bill immediately. She wants to kill me to get the house." "Oh, my head is spinning." David entered, gloomy as a storm cloud. He threw his car keys onto the table with a clatter. "Mom, stop moaning. My head is already splitting. The car is out of gas. The cards are blocked. Not a penny in my pocket. Today at work, I had to borrow money from a colleague for lunch. What a disgrace. We're in crisis. We're in crisis." Ivy came downstairs, phone in hand and a displeased face. "David, what is this? The Wi-Fi is also off. I can't get online, can't contact anyone. The IRS sent a second summons. I'm so scared. Call Sarah. Get her back. You can even get on your knees. Just get her back and solve my debt problem." David lashed out at his sister. "Shut up. This all started because of you. You lived a peaceful life, but no, you had to mess with taxes. Now she's gone. Cut off all help. What am I supposed to do?" "You." Brenda jumped up, forgetting her headache. "You're defending your wife now and yelling at your sister? That Sarah has become so brazen because you don't know how to control your wife. What kind of man are you? A doormat, letting your wife walk all over you. If you don't bring her back, I'll go to her job myself and cause such a scene that she'll be too ashamed to look people in the eye." "Mom, stop it," David roared, clutching his head. "If you go there, security will throw you down the stairs. She's a high-ranking executive there. Besides," his voice softened, "if we push her now, she really will divorce us and we'll all end up on the streets. This house is hers, and the money in the family is hers too." Silence fell in the room. The cruel truth they had ignored for so long now became obvious. They lived by parasitizing me, and when the host began to resist, they became weak and helpless. I looked at the screen and smirked. They had begun to turn on each other. When heat, hunger, and destitution arrived, the so-called sacred family ties they so loved to preach to me about burst like a soap bubble. It was time to cast the next bait. I knew Ivy was cornered. Creditors and the IRS were breathing down her neck. A petty thief and miser like her wouldn't sit idly by and wait for her fate. I called Maria, the housekeeper, whom I had left at the house. Maria was an honest woman. I had once helped her pay for her daughter's medical treatment, so she was grateful and very loyal to me. "Hello, Maria. Proceed with the plan. Speak casually, so they don't suspect anything." On the camera, I saw Maria tidying up near Ivy. She pretended to mumble to herself, but loud enough for Ivy to hear. Oh, the mistress was in such a hurry. She forgot her Hermes bag and an emerald jewelry set in the safe. She called yesterday asking if they were there, but I don't know the safe's password. They say that set is worth a fortune. It feels unsettling that it's just lying there unattended. Ivy's ears perked up. Her eyes lit up with greed. She looked around, saw her parents and brother engrossed in their argument, and quietly rose, heading toward the stairs leading to my bedroom. The fish had bitten. I turned off my phone and returned to the documents on my desk. The plan to punish their greed had begun. Ivy, do you want money to pay off your tax debts? Your sister-in-law will give you a chance, but the price you'll pay is your reputation, for life. Though, perhaps, you didn't have much of one to begin with. I calmly signed the remaining documents, mentally picturing tomorrow's scene. Soon, a spectacle would begin, more interesting than any TV series, and the VIP invitations had already been delivered to the villains. I sat in my cool office, my gaze fixed on my tablet screen, which was live streaming images from the camera in my bedroom at the mansion. 2 days had passed since I cut off all their finances, electricity, and water. That house must now have resembled a hellish furnace, burning away its inhabitants' patience and humanity. On the screen, my bedroom door quietly opened, and a figure slipped inside. It was Ivy, my precious sister-in-law, dressed in a thin, spaghetti-strap nightgown. Sweat streamed down her face, plastering her hair to her forehead. The light from the window illuminated her gaunt face and darting eyes, full of fear and greed. I smirked. As I had predicted, this fish was too hungry. Ivy was being hounded by tax collectors and debt collectors. In this desperate situation, Maria's casual words about the Hermes bag and emerald set in the safe became her only lifeline. Ivy tiptoed to my vanity table and, with trembling hands, began to rummage through the second drawer. That's where I usually kept a spare safe key. In truth, I'm a very careful person and never leave keys lying around. But before leaving, I had deliberately placed it there, like a piece of bait before a hungry cat. Finding the key, Ivy's eyes gleamed like car headlights. She hastily rushed to the wall-mounted safe, inserted the key, and began to dial the code. The code was David's birthday. I had never changed it. Not because I was lazy, but because I wanted to test whether my husband and his family respected my personal space. And now, the answer was right before my eyes. Ivy confidently entered the code, which proved she had been eyeing my possessions for a long time. The safe door opened. Ivy snatched the bright orange Hermes Birkin bag, made of crocodile skin that lay neatly inside. Then she pulled out a red velvet box containing an emerald set, a necklace, earrings, and a ring. She opened the box, and the green sparkle of the high-quality fake stones dazzled her. I watched Ivy's ecstatic face with pity. That bag was a first-class replica I had bought during a business trip to Asia, intending to give it to a few young employees who loved taking photos for social media, but then I forgot to hand it over. And that jewelry set was just artificial stones of expert craftsmanship, their real value not exceeding $100. I bought it to wear to minor social events, but in the eyes of an ignorant person, blinded by money like Ivy, it was a fortune capable of saving her life. Ivy hastily shoved the jewelry box into the bag, clutched it tightly to her chest, and looked around. She quickly closed the safe, put the key back in place, and slipped out of the room. I turned off the tablet and leaned back in my chair. Everything was going according to script. Ivy thought she had hit the jackpot, but in reality, she had just signed her reputation's death warrant. I picked up my phone and sent a short message to Maria, my friend and owner of the most prestigious luxury consignment boutique in the city. The fish has bitten. Get ready to welcome our dear guest. The message was sent. I felt a chill in my soul, but also determination. The punishment should not be limited to just deprivation of money. I wanted them to experience the feeling of exposure, of public humiliation, just as they had trampled on my dignity for 3 years. Tomorrow would be a very long day for Ivy. The next morning, I calmly drove to Maria's shop, parked in a secluded spot, and observed through the display window. Exactly at 10 a.m., Ivy appeared. She was wearing a medical mask and a baseball cap pulled low. In her hands, she clutched a black bag, which undoubtedly contained the fake bag and jewelry. Her furtive appearance attracted even more attention. Ivy pushed open the door and entered. Maria's shop was known as a place for the elite, with a luxurious interior and a subtle scent of sandalwood. Maria, standing behind the counter, winked at an employee when she saw Ivy, while pretending to be busy with inventory. I put on dark sunglasses and followed her in, but quietly sat in the VIP waiting area, hidden behind a large potted plant. From this spot, I could see and hear everything perfectly. Ivy placed the bag on the glass table and, in a conspiratorial whisper, addressed the appraiser. "Could you please appraise this Birkin and emerald set? I urgently need money, so I want to sell it quickly. The price is negotiable." The employee in white gloves carefully took out the bag. As soon as she touched the leather surface, she frowned slightly. She took a magnifying glass and meticulously examined each stitch, and then the interior. After that, she opened the jewelry box and shone a special tester on the greenstones. The atmosphere in the shop became tense. Several wealthy clients, browsing the merchandise, turned with curiosity. After 5 minutes, Maria approached. She glanced at the bag and forcefully threw it onto the table. The loud thud made Ivy flinch. Maria spoke loud enough for the entire shop to hear. "Who are you trying to deceive by bringing this garbage here? This is a Hermes bag from a street vendor, artificial leather, crooked stitching, and this jewelry set is dyed plastic. You can find plenty of that at night markets for a few $100s. Do you think my shop is a dump?" Ivy turned pale and began to stammer. "What are you saying? These are my sister-in-law's things. She's very wealthy. She only owns originals. How can this be fake? Look closer." Maria scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "Whether she's rich or not, I don't know. But what you're holding is 100% fake. You are attempting fraud. Security, detain her and call the police." Hearing the word police, Ivy panicked. She grabbed her belongings and tried to run, but 2 tall security guards had already blocked the exit. The wealthy clients began to whisper. Someone even pulled out a phone and started filming. Ivy lowered her head, humiliated and disgraced. Tears streamed from her eyes. At that moment, I slowly emerged from behind the plant and took off my dark sunglasses. "Maria, wait! Don't call the police. These are my people. I'll handle it myself." Ivy looked up and, seeing me, froze, as if she had seen a ghost. There was no color in her face. "Sarah." I walked up to her, took the fake bag, turned it over in my hands, and threw it back into her lap. "What happened, Ivy?" "I remember leaving this bag in the safe in my bedroom. How did it manage to leave on its own? Do you have the key to my safe?" Ivy was speechless. Her entire body trembled. She realized she had fallen into a trap. I took out my phone, played the video of her entering the bedroom and stealing the items, and held the screen up to her face. Theft of property, illegal entry into a dwelling, plus attempted fraud. Considering your tax evasion case, how many years do you think you'll get if I send this video to the police? Ivy collapsed onto the cold floor, wrapped her arms around my legs, and sobbed, "Sarah, forgive me. I was desperate. That's why I did it. Please, forgive me. Don't report me to the police, I beg you." I looked at my sister-in-law without any sympathy. I took a pre-prepared document and a pen from my handbag, placing them on the table. "You want me to forgive you? Fine. Sign this." It was a sworn affidavit detailing the theft committed by Ivy and also confirming that she had previously borrowed a total of $100,000 from me and not repaid it. I needed legal evidence to cut off all avenues of retreat for this family. Ivy took the paper, her trembling hands scanning the text, and then, gritting her teeth, signed it. She had no other choice. Once she had signed, I took the document and said coldly, "Take this junk and use it. And remember, this is your first warning. Next time, there will be no paper, there will be handcuffs." I turned and left with Maria, leaving Ivy sitting on the floor in the middle of the store, humiliated and disgraced under the contemptuous stares of the crowd. After Ivy's downfall, I knew Brenda wouldn't let it go. As expected, 2 days later, she stormed into the office building where I worked. She didn't come alone, but with 2 of David's aunts, notorious family gossips. Brenda's goal was clear: to cause a scandal to disgrace me, damage my reputation, and force me to return and support them again. But I had anticipated this move. I had instructed security and reception in advance. As soon as Brenda entered the lobby and prepared to yell, I appeared and blocked her path at the elevator. "Brenda, what are you doing here?" I asked in a calm but authoritative tone. Seeing me, Brenda lunged forward, jabbed a finger in my face, and screamed, You bitch. You dared to set up your sister-in-law, forced her to sign that debt acknowledgement. Today, I'll show your true face to your entire company. People, look. A director, yet so shameless. She's destroying her husband's family. Employees and clients in the lobby began to turn. Brenda, seeing the audience, went into a frenzy and prepared to fall to the floor. I didn't flinch. I signaled to security to maintain order. Then I took out my phone from my bag and connected it to a portable Bluetooth speaker that I had prepared in advance. "Brenda, you want everyone to hear our family story? Fine, I'll give them that opportunity." I pressed a button, and Brenda's piercing, indignant voice echoed through the lobby. It was an audio recording from the day she forced me to take the blame instead of Ivy. "If you don't take the blame for your sister, get out of my house. You're a useless daughter-in-law. We need your money, not your fake morals." This was immediately followed by the video of her. I projected this video onto the large screen in the lobby, which was usually used for corporate advertising. The entire lobby froze, all eyes fixed on the screen, and then turned with disgust and contempt towards Brenda. Whispers began. "My God, what kind of mother-in-law is that? She's a monster, forcing her daughter-in-law to go to jail. That old woman is crazy. She looks so decent, but in reality, she's a snake. Poor director, supporting the whole family, and they treat her like that." Brenda's face changed color from red to purple, and then became deathly pale. The two aunts who had come with her, seeing that the situation had turned against them, hastily moved aside, pretending not to know her. Brenda stood frozen in the middle of the lobby, opening her mouth to say something, but unable to utter a word. Her most powerful weapon, brazenness, and public opinion had been shattered by me with the truth. I turned off the screen, walked up to Brenda, and whispered so only she could hear, "Brenda, leave now. Don't embarrass yourself in front of these people. If you dare to come here again, I'll send all these materials to your neighborhood gossip groups, local community forums, and post them on social media. Then you'll be ashamed to look your neighbors in the eye." Then I took a document from my folder. "This is a covenant of non-interference in my personal life. Sign it. Promise that from this moment on, you will not bother me, you will not demand money, and I will keep everything private. If you don't sign it, tonight the whole city will know your true face." Brenda looked at the paper. Her hand trembled. She knew she had lost. Her false dignity would not allow her to endure such public disgrace. She snatched the pen, carelessly scrawled her signature, and threw the document at me. "Fine. You got what you wanted. Consider that I no longer have a daughter-in-law like you." She turned and scurried out of the building, hunched over like a beaten dog. I watched her go, carefully folding the signed covenant into my bag. This was my second talisman. Step by step, I was severing all the tentacles of my husband's family that clung to my life. After Brenda and Ivy's crushing defeat, Richard Peterson entered the game. As the head of the family, the most respected man in their lineage, he convened an urgent family intervention. He invited the elders, uncles, and aunts to teach the disobedient daughter-in-law, meaning me, a lesson. He believed that pressure from the family and patriarchal values would make me bow my head and admit guilt. I received the message about the family meeting from Richard with calm acceptance. Teach me a lesson? We'll see who teaches whom. I meticulously prepared my materials, grabbed my laptop, and with the coldest expression, drove back to the mansion. The living room was full of people. The air was thick with cigarette smoke. The family elders sat primly on the sofas, sipping tea. Richard sat in the center with a grim and menacing look. David cowered in a corner, not daring to lift his eyes. Brenda and Ivy were hiding upstairs, apparently still recovering from recent blows. Seeing me, one of the uncles slammed his fist on the table and yelled, "Sarah, you joined the Peterson family and dare to behave so brazenly with your in-laws, harm your husband's sister, run away from home. Have you lost all sense of conscience? Immediately get on your knees and apologize to your father-in-law." I did not kneel, nor did I show any fear. I pulled up a chair, sat in the middle of the room, and crossed my legs. My posture was as confident as it would be at a board meeting. "Esteemed uncles and aunts, before accusing me, please listen to the whole story. In our time, words must be supported by evidence. I am not one of those foolish women to whom you can say just anything." Richard roared. "You dare to talk back? The evidence is clear. You cut off the electricity and water to make your old parents die of hunger and thirst. You framed your husband's sister. You are ungrateful and shameless." I smiled, opened my handbag, took out my laptop, and connected it with an HDMI cable to the large 6.5-inch television hanging in the living room. "Richard, you say I'm ungrateful. Fine. Allow me to present a small report so that the esteemed relatives here can judge who is truly to blame. I'm a financier. I only believe in numbers." The TV screen lit up. On the first slide, in red letters, was written, "Financial report on marriage for 3 years." The entire living room fell silent. The elders squinted at the screen, not understanding what was happening. They were accustomed to family meetings full of empty moralizing, but had never seen disagreements handled with PowerPoint. I took the clicker in my hand and walked up to the television. "Today, I will make transparent all the income and expenses of this family for the past 3 years so that you, esteemed guests, can see who is supporting whom and who is an ungrateful parasite." Richard, with bulging eyes, wanted to rush and pull out the cable, but I anticipated this and looked at him with an icy gaze. "Richard, sit still. If you try to damage my property again, I will immediately call the police. This is my house. This television was bought by me. This laptop is mine. You have no rights." My determination made Richard stop. He sank back into his chair with annoyance. His face turned crimson. I began my presentation. My voice was loud, clear, and steady. Each word, like a knife, cut open the ugly truth of this respectable family. I switched to the next slide. A bar chart comparing incomes appeared on the screen. A tall blue column, reaching the top of the chart, was labeled "Sarah Miller's income, $5 million." Next to it, a tiny gray bar, barely visible at the base, with the label "David Peterson's income, $400,000, $500,000. A murmur rose. I said loudly, "Look carefully. In 3 years of marriage, my total income is more than 11 times my husband's income. I worked day and night, constantly traveled for business, to earn money, and my husband, who supposedly has a stable job in government service, actually earns just enough for gas and breakfasts." I switched to the third slide, expenses for husband's family. A long list appeared, detailing each item and date. This Toyota Land Cruiser that Richard Peterson drives, costing Bawen, $100,000, was paid for 100% by me. Richard told relatives that his grateful son gave it to him, but in reality, David didn't contribute a penny. I glanced at Richard. He lowered his head, sweat pouring from him, though the room wasn't hot. Relatives began to look at him with suspicion. It turned out all his glamour was borrowed from his daughter-in-law. Next, $100,000 to pay off Ivy's credit card debts, spent on designer bags. $150,000 to pay off Brenda Peterson's gambling debts, and hundreds of small expenses for food, utilities, 5-star vacations for the entire family. In total, over 3 years, I spent $3 million on my husband's family, more than half of what I earned. I didn't spare the money because I considered them my family, but what did I get in return? I switched to the last slide. It featured photographs, Brenda Peterson with a bottle of poison, Ivy stealing items, and David kneeling and begging me to go to jail instead of his sister. They forced me to go to jail instead of his con artist sister. They cursed me when I refused. They saw me as a heartless ATM. Esteemed uncles and aunts, I ask you, where is the morality here? Where are the family values that allow a husband's family to treat a daughter-in-law this way? A heavy silence fell in the room. The evidence was too obvious, too convincing. No one could defend Richard Peterson's family anymore. The family elders, for whom honor was paramount, now burned with shame for him. They had been deceived for so long by false glitter. The family patriarch stood, leaning on his cane, and walked toward the exit, shaking his head bitterly. What a disgrace, a wretched family. Richard, I didn't expect you to be this kind of man. Don't call me to your family squabbles anymore. With that, he left. The others also began to disperse. No one said goodbye to Richard, only casting contemptuous glances at him. In the huge living room, only I and Richard Peterson's family remained. He collapsed into a chair like a sack of bones. His face was ashen. David stared at me. For the first time, he was afraid of the wife he had always considered soft and compliant. I gathered my laptop, disconnected the cable, and coldly announced, "The meeting is over. From this moment on, I officially cease all financial support. Live as you please, and prepare to sign divorce papers." I have no more feelings for this family. I picked up my bag and left the house with a light heart. It was a brilliant victory, but I knew that the biggest blow for David was still waiting for its moment on a flash drive I had accidentally found last night while tidying his office. The terrible secret of his dirty betrayal was about to be revealed. I returned to the hotel as the clock showed 11 p.m. My body ached from fatigue after the tense family intervention, but my mind was unusually clear. The feeling of an initial victory made adrenaline surge through my veins. I tossed my bag onto the sofa, poured a glass of water, drank it in one gulp, and sat down at the desk. In my hand was a tiny silver flash drive, something I had accidentally found, wedged in a crevice of the bookshelf when I tidied David's office 2 days ago. David was very untidy, but he had hidden this flash drive so meticulously. That meant there was something inside he didn't want anyone to see. I turned on my laptop and inserted the flash drive into the USB port. A familiar sound played, and a new folder appeared on the screen. I opened it. Inside were dozens of subfolders, neatly sorted by date. I randomly opened a folder titled My Little Family. Instantly, hundreds of photographs appeared on the screen, freezing me in place. The photos showed David, my husband, beaming with happiness. In his arms, he held a cute boy of about 2 years old. Next to him stood Jessica, his former college girlfriend. They were dressed in coordinated family outfits, blowing out candles on a cake together, picnicking together, laughing happily together. They looked like an ideal, exemplary family, happier than David and I had been in all 3 years of our marriage. I opened other folders with trembling hands. Son's first birthday, hospital discharge, vacation in Miami, 5-year anniversary. 5 years. David and I had only been married for 3 years. This meant he had never broken up with Jessica. He had been deceiving me from day one, turning me into a puppet in this fake marriage. But the blood in my veins froze not from these sentimental photographs, but from an Excel file titled Expenses. I opened it. As a financier, I understood its essence at first glance. It was a detailed table of all the money David spent on Jessica and their son. Rent for a luxury condo in a downtown high-rise, $2,500 a month. Private school tuition for son, $1,500 a month. Support for Jessica, $3,000 a month. Life insurance for son, $5,000 a year. I scrolled to the end of the table. The total sum astonished me. $400,000, $500,000 over 3 years. This figure strangely coincided with David's total income, which I had just presented to all his relatives. It turned out his entire salary went to his mistress and illegitimate child, and I, his legal wife, was supposed to work myself to the bone to support his entire family, from his parents to his sister, and even himself. I laughed, and tears streamed from my eyes. I laughed at my own foolishness. I thought David was weak-willed and earned little, so I didn't demand financial contributions from him, as long as he took care of the family. It turns out he wasn't poor and wasn't weak-willed. He simply played the role of a dependent in front of me to extract money from me for his other family, while investing his own money in building his own nest with another woman. Hatred flared within me, burning away the last remnants of marital affection. He used my hard-earned money to support a mistress, while his mother forced me to drink poison, and his sister stole my belongings. This whole family was a den of vampires, sucking blood. Nothing less. I wiped away my tears. Enough. Tears wouldn't help now. I copied all the data from the flash drive to my computer and uploaded it to cloud storage for security. I needed to calm down. I am Sarah Miller. I solve problems with the cold logic of a financial manager, not in the fury of a betrayed woman. David, you wanted to play a double game. Fine. I'll show you the price of angering the one who holds the key to the vault. I spent the entire night reviewing the data from the flash drive and cross-referencing it with David's bank transactions, which I had obtained in advance thanks to my connections. Everything matched down to the smallest detail. Transfers from David's payroll account to Jessica's account were labeled very tenderly. Husband to wife for pocket money, dad to son for milk. The next morning, I woke up early, meticulously applied makeup to hide my swollen eyes. I chose a strict black business suit and applied dark red lipstick. Today, I didn't go straight to the office. I had more important business. I didn't stage loud scenes of jealousy, like other women showing up, tearing clothes off the mistress, filming videos and posting them online, or screaming in the street. That only humiliates you and breaks the law. I knew the law. I would use the law and administrative leverage to dismantle David's life. David worked in a prominent government department where employees' backgrounds and moral character were paramount. A man who violated monogamy, had an illegitimate child, and deceived his family certainly couldn't remain there. I drafted an anonymous, yet very substantial, statement. In it, I clearly outlined the facts of David Peterson's violations of professional conduct and ethical standards. To the statement, I attached a thick folder of documents. A copy of our marriage certificate, photographs of David and Jessica with their son, bank statements confirming he supported his mistress, and screenshots of their intimate messages where they called each other husband and wife. I didn't send it myself, but hired a courier service that delivered the packages directly to the department head, Human Resources, and the Ethics Committee of David's agency. I sent another copy to his political party's disciplinary committee. With such irrefutable evidence, his political career and stable job, which he was so proud of, were doomed. Having done all this, I calmly walked to a cafe across from his department, ordered black coffee without sugar, and began to observe. Around 9 a.m., the courier delivered the packages to the reception. 10 minutes later, I saw the secretary come down to retrieve them. By 11 a.m., a commotion began in the building. I saw David being called into his boss's office. Through the glass door, from afar, I saw his frightened, subservient posture. An hour later, David emerged from the building with an ashen, deathly pale face. He stumbled as he walked, almost falling on the steps. He had undoubtedly just received an order of suspension from work, pending an official investigation. For a man like David, who so cherished his status as a government employee, this was a blow worse than death. My phone rang. It was David. I looked at the screen, smiled coldly, and pressed the decline button. I blocked his number, as well as his WhatsApp and all social media. I knew David would now be frantically searching for me. When a cornered beast, he lashes out at everyone. He had lost his job, his reputation, and soon he would lose his golden goose me. He would surely think about hiding assets or extorting money through threats. I opened the video surveillance app on my phone. As expected, David didn't drive to me, but straight to the mansion. He needed money, and the most valuable thing he could think of were the deeds to the house, which he thought I still kept in the safe. But he was wrong. I had long ago transferred all important documents for safekeeping to a bank safe deposit box. Another good show was about to begin. I took a sip of my bitter coffee and called my contact at the local precinct. "Hello, Detective Johnson. I suspect someone has broken into my house and is destroying property. I'm currently away on a business trip. Could you send a unit to check?" "Yes, the cameras are constantly sending alarm signals. Thank you very much." On the 4K resolution video surveillance camera screen, I watched David carelessly park his car right in the middle of the driveway. He leaped out, not even bothering to close the door, and stormed into the house like a wounded beast. His appearance was pathetic. Shirt unbuttoned, tie askew, hair disheveled. He burst into the living room and screamed my name, "Sarah, bitch!" "Come out, you dared to cost me my job. Where are you hiding? Come out immediately." There was no answer. The house was silent as a tomb. His parents and sister had apparently fled or hidden in their rooms, fearing creditors. David, in a fit of rage, began to smash everything around him. He swept the crystal service off the table, kicked the decorative vase in the corner. The sound of breaking glass and porcelain was so loud that I had to lower the volume on my phone. Not finding me, he headed for his next target, the master bedroom, where the safe was located. He dashed up the stairs, skipping 3 steps at a time, but found the door locked. On the very day I left, I had replaced the lock with a new, smart one, with a high degree of security against forced entry. David slammed and kicked the door with a loud thud, but the thick oak door held firm. He cursed, his obscenities echoing through the empty house. "Locked the door? Do you think you can keep your property? I'll tear this house apart. I'll sell it and see what you'll do." He ran to the kitchen and returned with a sledgehammer in his hands. His eyes were bloodshot, and mad glints danced in them. He swung and hit the smart lock with all his might. Bam! Bam! The sound of metal striking wood was terrifying. The door began to crack, splinters flying everywhere. David, as if possessed, continued to strike, shouting insults at me. He wanted to find the deeds to the property. He thought that with this document, he could sell the house, get the money, pay off his debts, support Jessica and his precious son, and start life anew. Greed and foolishness clouded his mind. He forgot that this house was my personal property, registered only in my name. Even if he found the deed, without my signature, it would be just a useless piece of paper. I looked at my watch. 10 minutes had passed since I called Detective Johnson. The police should arrive soon. At the moment, David finally broke down the door and stepped into the bedroom. About to rush to the safe, the piercing wail of a police siren sounded. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt at the gate. Police officers in full gear immediately stormed into the yard. "Police, cease your unlawful actions." An authoritative voice boomed from a megaphone. David flinched and dropped the sledgehammer to the floor, barely missing his foot. He looked out the window in stunned disbelief. His face turned deathly pale. He hadn't expected me to call the police, and certainly not for them to arrive so quickly. 3 officers ran upstairs, aiming their service weapons at David. "Hands up! Face the wall," one of them commanded. David, with trembling hands, obeyed. "Guys, this is a misunderstanding. This is my house. I'm the owner. I was just fixing the door." One of the officers cuffed him and said in a stern voice, "We received a report from the property owner, Miss Sarah Miller, regarding illegal entry, property destruction, and threats. Let's go to the precinct. You can explain everything there." David was led downstairs. Passing the living room, I saw Richard Peterson and Brenda Peterson peeking from behind a door. Their faces were pale, but no one dared to come out and intervene. They were afraid they would also be taken away. Their precious son, their hope and support, was now being led away in handcuffs, like a dangerous criminal, right before their eyes. I closed the camera app. The screen went dark, concluding this tumultuous morning. I exhaled with relief. At least for the next few days, David wouldn't bother me. David was taken to the precinct that same day. As the victim, I fully entrusted the handling of the case to my attorney, Michael. Michael was a professional and knew how to present the situation in the most serious light. Although David cried out that it was their shared marital property, Michael presented documents proving that the mansion and all its furnishings were my premarital property. The act of vandalism, captured by the camera, was classified as intentional property damage. Furthermore, the recorded threats to kill me and burn the house became evidence of domestic violence and disturbing public order. In the end, David was taken into custody for 15 days pending investigation and to prevent further threats against me. 15 days. 2 precious weeks. This was golden time for me to calmly finalize all matters related to this marriage. The first thing I did was file for an uncontested divorce in family court, with a full package of evidence of infidelity, violence, and irreconcilable differences. My case was processed very quickly. I also filed a property division lawsuit, demanding that David return the $90,000 I had loaned him under a promissory note. Then I hired professional security, who stood guard 24/7 at the mansion gates. I called in craftsmen, who replaced all the doors and installed an additional alarm system with infrared sensors. Richard Peterson and Brenda Peterson still remained in the house, but lived in constant fear. They dared not go beyond the gates because of the guards in black, and they dared not argue loudly, knowing that cameras were recording their every move. On the 5th day of David's detention, I received news from his work. An official order of dismissal had been issued. The reason? Gross misconduct, violation of ethical guidelines, and bringing disrepute to the agency. Jessica, David's mistress, also suffered. She worked as an accountant in a private company, but this story went viral on local social media and news outlets, and colleagues began to harass her. Under pressure from management, she had to resign. I sat in my office and looked at the clear blue sky. My life suddenly became so calm without David's presence. I focused on work, secured 2 large auditing contracts, and allowed myself relaxing spa treatments on weekends. I never once visited David. According to my attorney, in the first days in custody, David constantly screamed, demanded to see me, threatened to file a counterclaim. But by the 10th day, he broke. He cried, begging the officers to let him call me to apologize. He realized that without me, he was nothing. He had lost his job, his reputation, and would soon lose his freedom. His inflated ego had been crushed by reality, but his remorse was too late. I didn't need a traitor's apologies. I needed justice and liberation. On the 15th day, David was released. I knew his family wouldn't let it go at that. They would throw all their efforts into a final battle in court. Brenda was surely preparing some cunning plan to win back some property or save the remnants of their reputation, and I was ready to accept the fight. At the courthouse, on the day the court scheduled the reconciliation session, it was pouring rain. A gloomy day, very fitting for a divorce. But for me, this rain was meant to wash away all the dirt of the past. I drove up to the district courthouse. From afar, I saw chaos at the gates. A crowd of 20 people in raincoats and umbrellas held red banners. I squinted to read the inscriptions. Ungrateful daughter-in-law got rich. Forgot family. Sarah Miller, director scammer, drove mother-in-law to death. Down with the shameless woman. At the head of this crowd stood Brenda Peterson. She sat on a plastic chair with a white mourning band on her head, crying into a megaphone, her tears mingling with the rain. Good people. Look at what a cruel daughter-in-law I have. She took away our house, put my son in jail, starves his old parents. My God, why such sorrow for me? Next to her stood a few hired protesters, who played along with her, emitting mournful wails. The scene, like a theatrical performance, created a tragic yet absurd atmosphere in front of the courthouse. Passers-by stopped curiously, causing a traffic jam. Tabloid journalists and YouTubers, sensing a scandal, were already live streaming. I sat in my car and smiled bitterly. Truly, a leopard cannot change its spots. Even in such a situation, Brenda still thought she could use this cheap spectacle to force concessions from me. She wanted to use public opinion to blacken my name, to make me fear for my reputation, and withdraw the lawsuit or share property with her son. David stood behind his mother in old clothes. Unshaven after 2 weeks in custody, he looked pathetic and dejected. He dared not look up, allowing his mother to put on this circus. My attorney, Michael, sitting next to me, frowned worriedly. Sarah, this is serious. This will severely damage your reputation. Perhaps we should go through the back entrance. I shook my head. My gaze was firm. No, Michael, the truth has nothing to fear. If I use the back entrance, they'll think I'm afraid, that I have something to hide. I'll go through the main entrance and show them that public opinion cannot be manipulated as they wish. I took out my phone and opened my social media page. I had hundreds of thousands of followers, mostly professionals and public figures. Michael, is everything ready? Is your team prepared? Yes, Sarah. All the evidence has been edited. They're just waiting for your command to publish. Excellent. I took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of my blazer, and got out of the car. I opened a large black umbrella and confidently walked through the rain directly toward the shouting crowd. Camera flashes blinded my eyes. Seeing me, Brenda, as if receiving a surge of energy, yelled into the megaphone even louder. "Here she is, this fox. People, this is her. The heartless woman." The crowd surged towards me but was stopped by court bailiffs and my personal security. I stood opposite Brenda, separated by a living hedge of people, and looked at her with pity. She thought this was her fatal blow, but she didn't know that I had prepared a much larger stage for her, where the truth would be revealed to millions of people, not just curious passers-by. I turned to the journalists, who aimed their cameras at me, and said loudly and clearly, "Do you want to know the truth? Don't just listen to one side. Go to my page right now. I will start a live broadcast and publish all the evidence. Let's see who is truly the victim and who is the bloodsucker." With that, I turned and walked towards the courthouse entrance, leaving behind the powerless shouts of my scheming mother-in-law. The media war had officially begun. I sat in the waiting area for trial participants, completely isolated from the noise and chaos at the courthouse gates. Through the soundproof glass, I watched the crowd shouting in the rain. Brenda was still crying. The orchestra was still playing mournful tunes, and journalists were still pointing cameras at her. They thought they controlled public opinion and had cornered me, but they were sorely mistaken. I opened my laptop and signaled to my social media manager, who sat nearby. "Start it. Live stream on all platforms." Instantly, a notification appeared on my page about a live broadcast with the title, "The Truth About a $5 Million Marriage and the Mother-in-Law's Act." The video began on the screen. Without long preambles, I dropped the first bombshell. It was an excerpt from the surveillance camera in the living room. A clear image of Brenda Peterson with a bottle of poison and a rope around her neck, screaming and forcing me to go to jail instead of Ivy. The sound was clear of ambient noise. Every word she uttered was audible. "I'll die to give you pleasure. If you don't go to jail instead of your sister, get out of my house." Immediately after, a scene followed where I placed the real bottle of weed killer on the table, and Brenda, in fear, discarded her fake one. The transition from aggression to cowardice was so real it provoked laughter. The number of viewers grew at a frantic pace. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 viewers live in just a few minutes. Comments poured in so fast, they were impossible to read. "My God, is this mother-in-law or a devil forcing daughter-in-law to go to jail instead of daughter? This old woman is crazy. Look how she's playing to the crowd outside the courthouse." I didn't stop there. The video switched to evidence of David's infidelity. Happy family photos with Jessica and their son, bank statements of money transfers to the mistress, all while his wife supported his entire family. Finally, Ivy's sworn affidavit of theft and the IRS notice for $2.5 million. The effect was instantaneous. At the courthouse gates, the crowd stirred. Passers-by, watching the live stream on their phones, began pointing at Brenda. Journalists and YouTubers, the quickest to react, immediately changed tactics. They stopped filming the crying Brenda and aimed their microphones at her with a barrage of questions. "Miss Peterson, how do you explain the video where you force your daughter-in-law to kill herself? Is it true that your son cheated on his wife and has an illegitimate child? Are you staging a performance to take your daughter-in-law's property?" Brenda stared in stunned silence, not understanding what was happening. She stopped crying and looked at the phone screen one of the journalists held out to her. Her face changed, becoming ashen gray. She mumbled something, waved away the microphones, and tried to run, but was surrounded by the crowd. The hired protesters, realizing they had been supporting a villain, quickly removed their signs and dispersed into the crowd. David stood rooted to the spot. He knew it was over. His reputation, honor, and last chance for retreat had been destroyed by me with irrefutable truth. I closed my laptop and adjusted my clothes. A knock came at the door. The court secretary invited David Peterson and me into the courtroom. I stood up and smiled confidently. The prelude was over. It was time to finalize everything on paper. The courtroom was solemn, cold, and tense. I sat in the plaintiff's seat with a straight back, confidently looking at the judge. Opposite me sat David, head bowed and trembling all over, a pathetic sight of a complete failure. Brenda and Richard Peterson sat on the spectator bench, quiet as mice. The presiding judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern look, began the session. After hearing the attorneys for both sides, she addressed David. "Defendant, do you have any objection to the petition for divorce and property division?" David tentatively stood and mumbled, "Your Honor, I agree to the divorce, but as for the property, this mansion, the place where we lived for 3 years, I also put effort into its upkeep. I demand half the value of the house." I quietly smirked. Even in such a situation, he still dreamed of someone else's property. My attorney immediately stood and clearly stated, "Your Honor, the mansion in Harmony Grove Estates is the personal property of my client, Sarah Miller. The deed of ownership in her name was obtained 6 months before the marriage registration. During the marriage, Mr. Peterson made no financial contribution to the repair or improvement of the house. On the contrary, he caused damage to the property, as evidenced by the video proof we have provided." The judge nodded, reviewing the thick folder of documents. She looked at David and asked sternly, "Defendant, do you have any evidence of your financial contribution to this house? Receipts, invoices, bank transfers?" David was speechless. How could he have receipts when his salary wasn't even enough for his mistress? He silently lowered his head. My attorney continued the attack. "Furthermore, we have full proof that Mr. Peterson borrowed a total of $90,000 from Miss Miller for personal needs. Here are the promissory notes with his signature. We demand that Mr. Peterson repay this entire sum to my client." The court carefully examined the promissory notes. I had been prudent. Each time David asked for a large sum, I made him write a promissory note, ostensibly for the convenience of managing the family budget. I never thought that this caution would become my sharpest sword. After deliberation, the judge stood and read the verdict. Her voice was loud and clear. Each word, like a hammer blow, drove the final nail into the coffin of this misguided marriage. The court rules to satisfy Sarah Miller's claim. The marriage is dissolved. Regarding the property, the mansion and all property within it are recognized as the personal property of Miss Miller. Mr. Peterson has no rights to it and is ordered to immediately vacate the premises. Regarding debt obligations, Mr. David Peterson is ordered to pay Miss Sarah Miller $90,000. Court costs are to be borne by the defendant. The gavel struck decisively and coldly. I exhaled with relief. A feeling of freedom filled every cell of my body. I stood and, without looking at my former family, walked toward the exit. David stood with his arms down and a blank stare. He was officially left with nothing. No house, no car, no wife, no job, with a debt of nearly $100,000 and court costs. Richard Peterson and Brenda Peterson, swaying, got up and shuffled away, staring into space. They had lost everything, and most painfully, they realized that their own greed had led them to rock bottom. After the court's decision, I thought they would leave me alone, but no. The harassment took a different form. Richard Peterson, my former father-in-law, kept calling me. He no longer cursed, but adopted a pleading tone, appealing to old sentiments, asking me to forgive David's $90,000 debt. He knew David wouldn't be able to pay, and if he didn't, the sheriff's deputies would come to seize other family assets. I knew Richard owned a small, aging bungalow in a less affluent part of the state, where they now lived. He was afraid of losing their last refuge. A plan began to form in my mind. I scheduled a meeting with Richard at a quiet cafe outside the city. He arrived on time, looking 10 years older. Seeing me, he gave an obsequious smile. "Sarah, I know you are a generous person." David was wrong. "Forgive him. If you force him to pay the $90,000, you will destroy our entire family." I sipped my tea and calmly said, "Richard, business is business. Feelings are separate. The court made its decision. I can't do anything about it. But I heard that the authorities are reopening old corruption cases from your time heading the city's project management office. If they seize your assets for damages, even this little house will go to auction." Richard's face paled. "What? How do you know? That was so long ago. I work in finance. News travels fast. Richard, let me offer you a solution. You transfer this house to me through a purchase agreement. I'll give you a symbolic amount in cash to legalize the deal." The house will be in my name, and neither the investigators nor David's creditors will be able to touch it. In return, I will forgive David's debt and give you $1,500 monthly for pocket money. You can continue to live there. I won't kick you out." Hearing this, Richard's eyes lit up. Greedy and believing himself to be smarter than everyone, he calculated. His son's debt would be forgiven, they would keep their home, and they would have money to live on. And the transfer was just a formality. He decided that I still harbored some feelings for them and wanted to help. "Are you serious? You won't deceive me?" I smirked. "Richard, why would I want your old house? I have a mansion, a luxury condo. I just want to help you preserve something for your old age, in gratitude for the years we were family." Greed clouded Richard Peterson's mind. The next day, he dragged me to a notary. The transfer went quickly. I received the deed of ownership in my name, and he received the document forgiving the debt and $15,000 in cash that I gave him as a down payment. But he didn't know that our entire conversation in the cafe had been recorded, and the purchase agreement was absolutely legal. 2 weeks later, when the authorities officially opened a corruption case against Richard Peterson, they came to seize his assets. He showed them the documents for the sale of the house to me with a smug look, thinking he had saved himself, but he was wrong. I provided the investigators with the audio recording and all transaction documents, proving that it was a fictitious sale to conceal assets from the government. With this evidence, Richard Peterson not only lost his house, but also received an additional charge of concealing assets, which became an aggravating circumstance in his corruption case. The trap of greed, into which he himself had stepped, snapped shut, sending him behind bars. The storm of retribution struck the Peterson family swiftly and mercilessly. First was Ivy. After I exposed her theft, the IRS referred her case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Large-Scale Tax Evasion. The amount of $2.5 million was too large, plus penalties and interest. Without my help and money for bribes, Ivy was arrested pending investigation. Then came Richard Peterson's turn. The corruption case, which had been gathering dust in the archives, was reopened thanks to statements from his former subordinates whom he had once harassed. With the evidence I provided about asset concealment, he was also arrested. A photograph of the once esteemed retired official, being led into a police cruiser, appeared on the front pages of local newspapers, writing off the remnants of his family's honor. Brenda Peterson couldn't withstand these blows. Hearing that her husband and daughter were in jail, she fell ill. She suffered a stroke. When she was taken to the hospital, doctors confirmed paralysis of the left side of her body and loss of speech. She lay motionless, her mouth twisted, unable to speak. No one was beside her. The hospital contacted me, as I was the only relative they could reach. I came and saw her pathetic and alone. I felt no schadenfreude, only bitterness. I didn't leave her to die, but I wasn't a saint to take her into my home. I found a modest nursing home in a quiet rural area for lonely elderly people. I paid for a year's stay in advance, the most basic package of services. On the day she was being transferred, I approached her wheelchair and spoke my final words. "Brenda, this is the last respect I can show you. You'll be cared for here. Try to live the rest of your life in repentance. Don't expect anyone to come and save you. You reap what you sow." She mumbled something. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. There was a plea in her eyes, but I resolutely turned away and left. David was completely disoriented, his family destroyed, his father and sister in jail, his mother in a nursing home, he himself deep in debt. Jessica, his mistress, seeing he was left with nothing, quickly took their son and left for another wealthy developer. She forbade David from seeing his son and even hired thugs to intimidate him. In despair and madness, David resorted to a final, terrible step. He decided that I was to blame for all his misfortunes and that only I had the money to save him. He couldn't get to me because of the security, so his target became his own son. One rainy evening, David ambushed the exclusive private preschool where the boy attended. Seizing the moment, he snatched the child, shoved him into a taxi, and drove off. He took the boy to an abandoned house outside the city and called me. "Sarah, listen carefully. I have the boy. I know you can't have children and have always loved this child. I need $500,000. Bring the money here, alone. If you call the police or don't come, I'll open the gas canister and blow us both up." David's voice on the phone sounded insane. In the background, a frightened child was crying. Despite my hatred for David and Jessica, I knew the child was innocent. I remained calm and pretended to agree to buy time. "Okay, I'll bring the money. Calm down, don't hurt the child. Give me an hour to gather the cash." I immediately informed the police. By tracing the call, they quickly determined David's location. Acting on their instructions, I took a suitcase with money and drove to the meeting point. In the abandoned house, David, with a lighter in one hand and his crying son in the other, stood next to a hissing gas canister. "Stand there! Throw the suitcase here," he yelled. I slowly approached, trying to distract him. "Here's the money, David, take it and leave. He's your son, don't do this." The moment David was distracted by the suitcase, the SWAT team, who had surrounded the house, moved in. A shot rang out. A sniper knocked the lighter from his hand. At the same second, the assault team burst inside, subdued him, and rescued the child. David was pinned to the dirty floor. He screamed in despair. He was arrested on charges of kidnapping for ransom and making credible threats to kill, with the aggravating circumstance of threatening to harm his own minor child. He faced a very long sentence, much longer than his father and sister. I watched him being led away, feeling nothing. Jessica rushed over, grabbed her son, mumbled something in thanks, and quickly left. Later, I secretly helped her with lawyers and money so she could give the child up for adoption to a childless couple from Canada. I wanted the boy to grow up in a new environment, far from the tragedies and sordidness of this family. 2 years later, I stand on the balcony of my mansion and breathe in the fresh air of an autumn morning. I have completely remodeled the house. It has become bright, spacious, with white oak furniture. The once gloomy garden is now full of roses and white chrysanthemums. All traces of the Peterson family have vanished. My career has soared. I have been appointed Executive Vice President for Global Operations. The past storms have toughened me, making me strong, discerning, but also magnanimous. Today is my housewarming, as well as the anniversary of my liberation. The garden is full of guests, laughter rings out. Andrew stands beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. He is my strategic business partner, and also the man who silently supported me through the darkest days. His care was like cool water, healing my wounds. "What are you thinking about?" he asked in a warm voice. I smiled. "I'm thinking about freedom. It turns out that happiness isn't blind sacrifice for others, but the ability to value and love oneself first." Andrew looked at me tenderly. He set down the glasses and pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket. "Sarah, I've waited so long for this day. I can't promise you a life without storms, but I promise that through any storm, I will always stand before you and never let you carry everything alone. Will you marry me?" I looked at the sparkling diamond ring, then into Andrew's eyes. There was no calculation in them, only sincerity. My heart, which I thought had frozen forever, suddenly beat faster. I nodded, and he slipped the ring onto my finger. I agree. Under the bright rays of the morning sun, I felt an incredible lightness. The painful past was behind me, giving way to a bright future. I, Sarah Miller, had conquered fate and won my well-deserved happiness. A new, hopeful chapter of my life had officially begun.